All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to listen closely to one of Australia's most famous poems, Bellbirds by Henry Kendall. Now, this isn't just a poem that describes nature. It actually fills your ears with the music of the wild, a soundscape that gave a poet some much-needed peace in a pretty tough world. And right here, in these last two lines, you find the real heart of the whole thing. See, this isn't just a poem about nature. It's about this deep, almost desperate need to hold on to the memory of that peace when you're stuck in the noise and chaos of city life. Okay, let's unpack this.
So, to really get the poem, we first need to meet the two main characters in this story. You've got the man who wrote it, and then you have the little bird whose song sparked it all.
What's so fascinating here is the contrast, right? On one side, you have Henry Kendall. He was called Australia's greatest lyric poet, but his life was actually filled with a lot of struggle, poverty, loss, you name it. And then on the other side, you have the bell miner, this tiny olive green bird with a bell-like call that became his ultimate symbol of hope, a link back to a much happier time in his childhood.
Okay, so let's jump into the poem itself. We're going to start with how Kendall uses his words to paint this incredibly real, vivid picture of the Australian landscape. And to really get the feel of his language, we're going to break down these key lines in Hindi.
यहाँ से कवि हमें सीधे ऑस्ट्रेलिया के पहाड़ों में ले जाते हैं। वो कहते हैं, By channels of coolness the echoes are calling, यानी ठंडी धाराओं के पास से गूंजती आवाजें आ रही हैं. And down the dim gorges I hear the creek falling. और धुंधली घाटियों में मैं झरने के गिरने की आवाज सुन रहा हूं. इन पंक्तियों से वो एक शांत और ठंडी जगह का माहौल बनाते हैं. फिर वो कहते हैं, And softer than slumber and sweeter than singing, the notes of the bellbirds are running and ringing. मतलब नींद से भी कोमल और किसी भी गीत से ज्यादा मीठे बेलबर्ड्स के स्वर चारों ओर फैल रहे हैं. तो इस पहले स्टैंजा में केंडल हमें पूरी तरह से उस माहौल में डुबो देते हैं. वो हमें धुंधली घाटियां, काई और देवदार के पेड़ दिखाते हैं, हमें झरनों और चिड़ियों की आवाजें सुनाते हैं और एक ठंडक और शांति का एहसास कराते हैं. यहाँ सॉफ्टर देन स्लम्बर और स्वीटर देन सिंगिंग जैसे अनुप्रास अलंकार या एलिटरेशन का इस्तेमाल करके वो अपनी कविता को भी उन चिड़ियों के गीत की तरह संगीतमय बना देते हैं.
So you can feel how he builds this amazing atmosphere, right? Now let's zoom in on the birds themselves. Because for Kendall, they're not just some background decoration. He gives them a life, a real character, that actually changes with the weather and the seasons.
यहाँ पर केंडल इन चिड़ियों के दो अलग-अलग रूप दिखाते हैं. पहली दो पंक्तियों में When shadows wax strong and the thunder bolts hurtle, they hide with their fear in the leaves of the myrtle. वो बताते हैं कि जब तूफान आता है और बिजली कड़कती है तो ये चिड़ियां डर के मारे पत्तों में छिप जाती हैं. लेकिन फिर When rain and the sunbeams shine mingle together, they start up like fairies that follow fair weather. जब बारिश और धूप एक साथ आते हैं तो ये परियों की तरह बाहर निकल आती हैं, जैसे अच्छे मौसम का स्वागत कर रही हों.
तो ये चिड़ियां सिर्फ सुंदर नहीं है, उनमें एक चरित्र है. वे तूफान से डरती हैं लेकिन बारिश के बाद परियों की तरह फिर से उभर आती हैं और तब उनके पंखों के सारे रंग, द ग्रीन एंड द पर्पल, द ब्लू एंड द गोल्डन, खुल जाते हैं. केंडल के लिए ये चिड़ियां मुश्किलों के बाद आने वाली सुंदरता और रेजिलियंस यानी लचीलेपन का प्रतीक हैं.
अब केंडल एक बहुत ही खूबसूरत साहित्यिक तकनीक पर्सोनिफिकेशन या मानवीकरण का इस्तेमाल करते हैं. वो महीनों को इंसानों की तरह दिखाते हैं. अक्टूबर द मेडन ऑफ ब्राइट येलो ट्रेसेस, यानी अक्टूबर एक सुनहरे बालों वाली लड़की है जो इन जंगलों में घूमती है. इसके विपरीत व्हेन फायरी डिसम्बर सेट्स फुट इन द फॉरेस्ट, यानी जब आग जैसा दिसंबर जंगल में कदम रखता है तो वो एक खतरनाक घुसपैठिया लगता है.
इस मानवीकरण से केंडल ये दिखाते हैं कि बेलबर्ड्स मौसम के हर बदलाव को सहते हैं. वे माइग्रेट नहीं करते, वे वहीं रहते हैं चाहे वसंत हो या गर्मी की तपिश. और सबसे महत्वपूर्ण बात, वे जंगल के रखवाले हैं. जब दिसंबर की गर्मी में कोई यात्री रास्ता भटक जाता है तो द बेलबर्ड्स डायरेक्ट हिम टू स्प्रिंग एंड टू रिवर. उनका गीत उसे पानी और सुरक्षा की ओर ले जाता है.
Okay, so we're at the final stanza, and this is where the poem completely shifts gears. The camera pulls away from the landscape and the birds, and it zooms right in on the poet himself. It gets super personal, and you can hear his own voice coming through loud and clear.
And this is it. This is where we find out what the poem is really about. He says, Often I sit, looking back to a childhood mixed with the sights and the sounds of the wildwood. He's wishing he could tap into the power and sweetness of those memories to create poetry that's truly alive, or as he puts it, lyrics with beats like the heartbeats of passion.
So, here's the main takeaway. The whole poem, with all its gorgeous imagery, has been building up to this very personal plea.
He wants to borrow the lights and of laughters from the bellbirds so he can keep the beauty and strength of the deep mountain valleys with him in the city. That memory, their song, is his medicine to slumber the pain of my losses.
So, the big question is, why has this poem stuck around for over 150 years? Why are we still talking about it? Let's take a quick look at the impact it had and why it's considered such a major piece of writing. Honestly, this poem was a total game changer. Back then, a lot of writers were still looking to England for their inspiration. But Kendall, he turned his focus inward. He celebrated the Australian bush not as some second-rate version of the English countryside, but as something truly beautiful and powerful on its own terms. He really helped create a distinctly Australian voice in literature. And this just shows you its incredible staying power. I mean, from its very first printing in a newspaper, it has been included again and again in major poetry collections for more than a century. It's not just some poem. It's a foundational piece of Australia's cultural story. And in the end, Kendall's poem leaves us all with this really powerful and timeless question. In our own loud, busy, chaotic lives, what's our bellbird song? What's that memory of a sound or a sight or a feeling that gives us strength? It's a thought that mattered back in 1867, and it might matter even more today.